Hello everyone and welcome back. Today we have a very interesting deck to show off. I am playing blue-white flash that is rotation safe, and there's a card in this list that I've enjoyed a lot, but it never quite came to fruition and actually became good. It's not like a Night Pack Ambusher. That card is sick, but we get Aaron Giada. Aaron Giada is kind of the centerpiece and what this deck kind of folds around, and the archetype that is kind of folding around in terms of that is flash. It's got flying. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may cast spells with flash or flying from the top of our library. So it does also allow us to do the timing things that we need to do with, like, if we have a Tidebinder on top and this is in play, on our opponent's turn, we can flash this in off the top of our library. There's no restriction. We don't have to play them on our turn or anything like that. And if we look very quickly, which is a cool thing if you didn't know how this worked, you type in flash and you click up, it'll actually show you every single spell that has flash on it. So you can see how many cards outside of just this card itself that it actually affects, and if they're on the top of our library that we can play, and not necessarily have to use cards from our hand. This will help a lot in the discard matchups and things like that, or Liliana being active. We have kind of the fodder cards in our hand that we can keep a hold of and just cast from the top of our library, making Liliana feel a lot worse and weird. But other than that, I need to remove the flash. We are just a kind of tempo-y deck. We're trying to early on interact with our opponent if we're on the kind of draw, especially if we're on the draw. And then if we're on the play, we want to be flashing in a creature on their end step on turn 2. Hopefully, like a Fairy Mastermind's pretty good, a Malcolm's pretty good. If not, we can kind of, I guess, flash in this, but we like to hold this as protection spell because backup gives another thing hexproof for one turn. But if we have to, we establish an interrupter and kind of make their spells cost more. Werewolf bodyguards to kind of exile things. We don't go too heavy on this because it's a little too fragile. And same with the flanker. Flanker's very good, and I actually like it in one of our matchups today. But getting the exile of the graveyard is kind of the key piece and reason I'm playing this, because if we don't have a counter spell, I'm kind of using this as one for that turn. But there is a kind of cool interaction that does show up. I think it might even be in game 1, to be honest. Soul Partition and its interaction with Aven Interrupter. So if you have an Aven Interrupter in play, then you Soul Partition a creature, which I believe happens. This kind of makes it cost 2 more and actually stacks. So this will actually make them cost 4 more. And Aven Interrupter, like, as you play more of them because they're not legendary, actually makes that go higher. So you can also make their spells in their exile zone almost ineffective entirely. I think we make a mono red creature cost 6 mana, so they weren't ever casting that anytime soon. And if we lose to that, then maybe we should just scrap the deck and move on. But the only other thing I'll recommend, and it doesn't really show up today, thankfully, because everybody loves Boros Convoke, but you could argue that at some point you can squeeze High Noons into the main board, because High Noon helps shut off a lot of that. We're already playing at instant speed, so sometimes we'll just take our turn to flash in a 2-mana creature, then hold up interaction on their turn, and if they do nothing, then flash in another creature and kind of play the game like that. And it also works really well with Stoic Things, keeping hexproof on this anyway, which is very nice. So outside of that, go ahead and hop in the games. If y'all enjoy my content, please consider subscribing. I truly appreciate it. And let's just head out there and flash some. Nope, I'm not going to say it. You know, everybody calm down. I almost said no, okay? No. Go to the games. Go first. Yeah, this hand is definitely keepable. We got all the color mana that we want. We have flash creatures coming in. The deck is a little heavy on 3 drops, which might end up being quite the problem. Might have to trim out some of them to kind of play some lower things. I'll bring that up if I actually do that at some point, but blue red. Sure. Picking up a second 2-mana spell. Nice. Because now we get options for redder, huh? Pass. Mastermind. In case they ever want to cast a second spell, I'll be glad to draw a card with them. No. And then we hold. Sure. Do have a bodyguard that can kind of exile something. I assume they're going to try to shoot my Mastermind out of the way. So far, I think we can see the issue that I was running into whenever I played Izzet Prowess is so far the 3 cards that they've cast all have been rotating cards. So if that tells you kind of the problem I was running into. All right, so I think that this card is pretty neat. I could do a different thing. I feel like monster trades and things like that are obviously plausible here. I'm gonna exile the flyer, because if they respond, now this triggers, and then my fairy mastermind triggers again. We're not even in blocks yet, so, or it only triggered once. Never mind, it doesn't trigger again. Then I guess I'm willing to just throw the block here. Soul Partition, pretty good card. They won't have a way to kind of counteract this one. So I play my tap land now. I think the answer is no. I think I like a Soul Partition making a 2/2 here. End the turn. To spend a slick shot, sure. Got some pretty cool news about that one. Makes it cost 2 more, so they're not even able to do anything about it. Pass. Nothing. Could be like a spell pierce, but we have the mana. Make this appear, we still have the mana, so they have to kind of like let it go. I assume this is just interaction. Oh boy. Would you like, opponent, to pay like full price for those? So we shut them off a little bit, and they now cost 2. Slick shot costs 6 mana. This is Aven Interrupter. Now, obviously, they can shoot my Interrupter out of the way, but then these get like way less big. They're not near as big of a problem this turn anyway, and we kind of have turns to deal with them. They pass here. For me, I think it is just slam on the value. Maybe they have counterspell, maybe they don't. Until they play it, I'm not interacting. Get in there, might as well. Lightning strike, they would have that anyway, so it's not like a Witch Stalker Frenzy that I had to play around, which they would already also have the value for. Flick shot, 2 damage. Yes, sir. So now we have like a weird play where we need to make our 2/2. Go to combat. Attack with this one. Play this guy. Could have played this first because like having this on top is definitely a better option. Throw a block. Not looking to die here. Yeah. Have another pump for it? No? Okay. Shredder comes in. Shredder is fine. Shredder must consider blocking at least. Bring this up. Because I can attack with this now. I don't really care as much. It'll make me a map token. This will untap my creature land, so it's not that big of a deal. And I go into this, and I target here. I'll leave the flanker on top. Seems fine with me. Like I said, the anchorage untaps. I now have massive creatures. They decide, okay, the game's over. I can't really do anything about it. We go first. If we didn't go first, this hand would probably have to be thrown back. But because we do, I can keep. Plays Archive. Actually, going first, I like playing Archive later so I know what I'm against. Especially in best of 1. In best of 3, you can argue like just play Archive, find the card that you like and enjoy. But like here, now that I know I'm against blue black, I'm definitely going to keep differently what's on top of my library in comparison to like my other options. This deck doesn't change that too much, but there are a lot of decks where it matters more often than not. I'm blue white. I got stuff to do. So this doesn't count as a second draw, so Fairy Mastermind won't trigger, so we just go ahead and allow that. They're hard blue black control here, it seems. Let us just go ahead and try to set up our next turn. I actually like playing Errant Giada here, but I feel like some amount of interaction is going to be here. I'm going to scry 2, gain 2 life. Yeah, like right there, I'd much rather look at 2 cards and throw them to the bottom and try to hit our land drops if we can. Looks like that's going to be the big determining factor of who comes out in this game. Attack. We have 3 steps ahead to counter something maybe important. We have Aven Mind Sensor to talk like an important spell. Aven Mind Sensor. Jeez, I'm playing mono white taxes. Leave me alone. But we have Aven Interrupter. Oh, they're Grixis. Interesting. This kind of changes a lot. Less likely to be playing counter magic. I'm gonna play this. They probably are playing counter magic. It's just like they're not gonna be playing as much if they're truly Grixis. They're gonna probably have a couple 3 steps ahead and things like that, because 3 steps ahead is just so good. But yeah, double flash creature is actually huge. My favorite part about Flanker, by the way, is the fact that this is just 3 damage nonstop. And I'm probably gonna protect it here with this guy. Put a counter on it and give it hexproof for the turn. Also, now it dodges cut down. Then I'll pass. Obviously, 3 steps ahead goes down, and I'm a little bummed about that. This also is an 0-1, so it doesn't really have a lot of value. But it does play around Shielder's Edict and things like that, so it's kind of nice. On my upkeep, would you like to interact with me, opponent? Counter target spell. I'm leaving my pressure on. I play non-stop at instant speed, so good play on them to make me do that. If I ripped a land, I'd feel very confident about this game. Missing this land drop means my tempo kind of staggers a little. Vampire's Vengeance on their turn, they're like, I'm not doing that again. I did not like the outcome there. And it looks like they might have missed a land too. Maybe, yeah. Go for the Throat, gone. Go for the Throat, pretty good card to just let go. There goes that. We will pass here. I got 2 creatures to flash in. They're both 2-1, so it doesn't really matter which one I throw in. Say 3 steps ahead this, then Malcolm can come in. Interact. Sure. I'll play as Malcolm, just in response. Alright, Mastermind gone. Exiled. Do you have another removal spell from Malcolm? Doesn't seem that way. Play a drop from us. We get to combat. I just kind of assumed we wouldn't. That's why I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and play my land. Now bringing this up, I have this to play. I have flash and it has ward 2, which they're kind of struggling on hitting their land drops. So ward 2 is actually really good, even though they technically do play a really good answer and go for the Throat. But I won't tell them about it if you don't, chat. Okay, well, yeah, so maybe they did rage off. I'm not entirely sure. They wasted 3 timeouts and they're no longer here. So sure, I guess. This is where we are in my turn. All today. What do we got, opponent? Or we're going to time out again. I'm not entirely sure, but it is what it is. And if they time out on their turn, I just flash in the Horn Lockwhale because they won't get priority anymore. It's auto passing their turn and they don't have a choice. So I'll automatically resolve my 6/6 and then I can bring up the anchorage along with everything and then attack. But I'll see you when they time out again. Oh, my bad, chat. I thought I was gonna get priority. I was just like sitting here. I clicked off. I was adjusting my music because I was like, well, if I gotta sit here for however long, I'm just gonna start bopping, you know. But yeah, they timed out. Ooh, what's that smell? Here, I'll keep. Quite like land heavy here. Oh, dude, everybody's favorite. A red-white land on turn 1. They didn't play anything, so I feel a little bit better about it. Oh, wait. They're Boros. They're Boros prowess. I was just like, oh, yeah, they're Boros. No duh, dude. Oh, bro. Sometimes I impress myself, chat. I kind of just want to have them pick that up, but I'm going to wait. I can do that at any point. I'll allow it. I suppose. Don't you dare have the protection spell. I'll fight you, dude. They always have a chance. Never fair. They always have it. That's like the upside of playing Boris, though, is to have that spell. Specifically that spell. Like, kind of the main reason you end up playing it. And then the double strike creature, but we're not going to talk about that. Sure. Go for it, big dog. I got nothing. This one. Like, oh, I got him once with the Lawrence Escape. What if I do it again? Tap lane here, kind of tough. Kind of the downside of playing these matches right now. Is a lot of tap lanes. Like, we don't get the deserted beach anymore because we're obviously playing towards rotation. So, like, the amount of tap lanes in the deck has kind of gone up, but to be able to afford to play the cards I have, I kind of have to. I will throw a block here. It could anger, which would be nice because then I get to draw an additional card. I'm going to throw the block just to see kind of what happens. I could obviously Lawrence Escape here, but I also have Soul Partition. I have a counter spell. Prowess doesn't quite save this. They do Lawrence Escape, which now tells me I have the perfect opportunity to make them pick this up. Yeah, I'm in their turn right away. I'm combat guy now. I have a 5/3. And it's cost 4 mana to put it in the battlefield. And I think you can only disguise from hand. I could be wrong about that. But I think that's right. Pass. Alright, opponent, here is my 5/3. And then I will hold up counter magic and interaction for the rest of the game. Unless you have a lightning strike. You do not. Okay, very sick. Combat. Hit for 7. I have a hard counter spell if needed. I have a no more lives for whenever they put this on the stack. Or I put it back into the plot zone and it costs them 6 mana to cast. Or no, it's not as bad now because it's not there from Soul Partition. Virtuoso. We counter. Then they lightning strike Stoic and then we counter it again. Okay, they do not. Yeah, so I think I had it in one of my games. If you maybe didn't enjoy that matchup and you skipped it or whatever and you watched this one, or you just didn't recognize, if you have Aven Interrupter in play and then you Soul Partition the thing, this actually makes it cost 4 extra mana in total because Aven says that spell costs 2 more to cast if it's not from hand, and then this makes it an additional 2, so they stack. So this would be 6 mana, a nice 2 mana, nice 6 mana 2/1 with prowess, you know. Very good ability on a card, you know. All right, we go first. A little tough on the hand. Aven Interrupter is kind of weird. But if we do happen to be playing against mono red, it actually finds value just playing it right away, which is interesting. Blue black. Less interesting now, but it is what it is. We'll pass. It could have interaction, like a counterspell. Oh, it's Jeskai. Or not. Blue black. It lacks either red or white. It is not Jeskai. That is Esper. That is Esper the Gathering, and there's a No More Lies coming in to probably counter this if I had to guess. Never mind, I'm nuts. Probably just any other form of interaction to remove my 2/2. My opponent said, look, man, I could do the same thing. And I said, you're right, you know, sometimes we can't all be first round draft picks, okay? I'm fine trading off because theirs follows into a Rafine, which gives them a lot more value than me. So I'm cool with getting rid of that. I'll probably fire off a No More Lies to counter a Rafine if they try to do it here. If they do nothing, I'm honestly going to try to draw 2 cards. I'm looking for an additional white source that's permanent. Discard a card. Because of that, I'm going to let the Mirrex go, which is interesting. I think I'm going to need like every threat I have here in turn. Picking up another 3 steps ahead is pretty crucial, but we only have 1 more left in the deck, so we do have to be careful of that. Flash this guy in? Or Flash the gals in. No. Dude, can you imagine if there was like proximity chat in Magic? Every time they remove your creature, you're just like, no, please don't do that. Oh man, it'd be kind of funny. It'd be so toxic though. You get lit up sometimes for sure. People be very upset. Very, very upset at times. Turns out Magic gamers sometimes aren't the calmest. I'm that gamer sometimes. It's only when I get slow rolled to oblivion and then I'm mad. Is what it is. Alright, but our hand's pretty well set up. We have another virtue to kind of cycle through here. There you have 5 mana. Maybe you've been holding on to Rafine this entire time. I have no idea. If they'd like to draw more cards, I will gladly accept that. Graveyard Trespasser. Not what I was expecting. This could be a counter spell. They didn't have it last time. I don't know if they'll have it this time. Even Interrupter, I guess. You can play that again on a following turn, just not this turn. Combat. 4. Getting rid of that Mirrex is being a pain now. So they could have ripped a counterspell here. This is also 7 mana for them, by the way. So it's not like they have a virtue play. I say anytime soon, but they're 1 land drop away. Because they've hit a lot of lands here. All 4 Seacrum Coast, by the way. Another land. They can play the virtue. I will put it back, but they can play it. This seems like a counterspell is worth the deeds, right? And then they can play the Graveyard Trespasser. Or I could play this Aven Mind Sensor and then hard counter it next turn, which seems like risky, but sure. Oh, did they have the counterspell now? Oh, that sucks. Oh, they just had removal. Okay. Fuck that. Way less good than what I thought was about to happen to me. Alright, we have quite the clock. It's a little slow, but you know, sometimes we can't all be first round draft picks. Look at Sunfault here. Go out as hard counter it. And then they play like Graveyard Trespasser, which does suck. Or do I just let this happen? And then hard counter the Graveyard Trespasser. I think countering this makes sense. I mean, my creatures are in the air, they're flying. They could play their Trespasser and exile like a creature or whatever. Man, they're hitting the lands. But I can also shut off a Trespasser on a following turn. I really just need that 5th mana. I know I got rid of a Mirrex, but I'm over 15 cards deep. I've seen 5 lands. The odds are fine to find one. Second Graveyard Trespasser. Tough. That's also like a brutal follow-up turn. 2 Fairy Masterminds at this point. Wild behavior. This is a land drop again. I play this. They have no more creatures to eat from my graveyard and none to eat from theirs. So technically, if they find nothing here. Yes. Like this does no more extra damage. If I find nothing here, I'm just double Mastermind in the air. Play your Virtue. Tap out, please. They almost tap out. They pretty much tap out. I would go for the counter spell, but I think it makes no sense here. We're going to squeeze by this. I think we are. There's untap. We're in the air. We go to combat, and we hit them for exactly lethal. I would argue that we saw the difference between flooding and not flooding, but, you know, they were at 44 cards. They saw 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 lands. I'm at 42 and I saw 4 lands. Magic's a cool and interesting game sometimes. Very sick. Okay, my opponent goes first. Our hand's pretty solid. Like, we get to surveil on turn 1, kind of knowing what our opponent's playing, and lead right into a Normalize or a Flash creature. On their end step, kind of varies on what it will be. Oh no, chat. They gain life. I can't keep up. Tidebinder's actually a sick draw, especially considering we found the second white source as well. We're really going to be reliant on this Virtue on the 5 mana side to probably get us out of this match. They're looking to flash in a creature on my end step, which is tough. I mean, seeing blue-white, I feel like you should just go ahead and flash it in, but apparently not. In turn. Oh, no. Okay. But this also is... Okay, I was going to say, this also suggests otherwise that it's not Boros. So cool, I get to have like an engaging fun match, not just watch them gleeful demolition a token and then die to a Knight Errant that I wasn't ready for on turn 1. It's like, it is quite the tale of two cities for sure. So we got a veteran here, which is fine. This will resolve. We can shut off Adeline. Making Adeline like a very awkward creature in general. Packle, another card to shut off. Especially because they'll attack here, and I'll get to pick it up. Now, they could have cut down, which will suck, because then they'll get rid of my Tidebinder. But if they don't, Tidebinder counters this, shutting Packle off, and gets to throw the block here. Most likely, they won't have cut down in this deck, because I don't know why they would. Now, we have Mirix come in. I have, like, Hexproof immunity. I have blue-white and blue and white, so I should be fine to go ahead and pass here. Definitely going to attack, though. Like, I'm gonna give them the option to get this Packle out of the way. Again, I can give it hexproof and then also dodges cut down later. Would like to probably set an Errant Giada in play so I know what my top deck is at all times. They play a second Packle to turn it back on. Again, Tidebinder only affects the copy that it affects, I guess, if you want to say it that way. Mishra, sure. That's fine. Attack. Okay. Cool. This. Make my 2/2. Resolve. Pass. Block. Make Mishra pretty much useless. Yep. Definitely tough. Not that I think turn 2 Thalia would have changed the game, but a turn 2 play or even kind of getting creatures on the board would have made it a lot easier. Alright, well, we come away winning every game, I believe. Some of them you can argue was due to circumstance, but also it's always weird to say that because obviously variance is a big part of Magic and how it works, but you can also argue that our cards would have found more value in some of those games where our opponent was kind of like, I'm going to do nothing. For example, I think that Esper one was a good like advertisement of that, where like, yeah, they flooded and they didn't find a Rafine, but also I had Fairy Masterminds in play, so if they did find a Rafine, like I'm also, if they ever attack, I'm also drawing a ton more cards. So it's always interesting to see how games kind of pan out in terms of like that situation, but also if you think about it again, them hitting all those lands did allow them to kind of counteract my Aven Interrupter. A lot of times Esper gets stuck on like 4 mana, and then this becomes a lot more taxing for them. But for them, they didn't care. So outside of that, I mean, I think the deck performed pretty well. I do think we might be a little high on the 3 drops because, wow, we had a lot of 3 drops. Other than that, you might want to play more 2 drops. You could maybe put an extra Malcolm in. Maybe you just argue that you can play like the Phantom card. Phantom, I think it is. This card, you can argue that maybe you should play like a copy or 2 of this, or maybe you want to go into more Soul Petition, maybe a Get Lost, things like that that are kind of good and interesting. Or even play like a couple more Horned Lock Whales. We played 24 lands, which is kind of a weird number. Like, you're not guaranteed to get to that mana cost of 6, but this does count as like 2 mana, put a creature back on top. But our main issue and our main board here, and something that you could consider doing if you really want to, and I would argue that it might be worth it, is maybe playing High Noon. And you might be like, well, why is that? I think Boros will be our biggest kind of competitor when it comes to finding our value. I just don't know how when they're on the play with Gleeful Demolition, like we can really rep for that. Obviously, we have some interaction and things like that, and if we can get to the fact that we get a virtue down and it starts untapping our creatures, we're pretty solid. But the problem is, like, this creature doesn't really do much against them. This doesn't do much, and they're X1, so they die immediately. Sidebinder being a 3/2 kind of gets beat up on if the kind of interaction is good. This is a 2/2, 2/2, and a 2/3, and then this is also an X1. So a lot of our creatures have higher powers, and that's kind of the point of the deck, is like every creature is a threat that our opponent has to answer because it hits a lot harder than what you kind of would want it to. For example, like a Fairy Mastermind on turn 2 is a 10 turn clock, which is quite like a large number, but it's a lot faster than playing a 1/2. That's a 20 turn clock, you know what I'm saying? So outside of that, like you flash in another creature, and now that like 10 turn clock becomes a lot quicker, and then you add more pressure, and then it gets overwhelming very quickly, especially when counter spells are involved and your kind of board wipes are just not going to resolve very well. But outside of that, I hope you all enjoyed. I think the deck did perform well. I do think High Noon is something you could consider. You do play kind of one spell a turn anyway, and that helps lean into the Stoic Sphinx. Obviously, it's a little bit weirder with Virtue, but I think we saw a couple of turns where I ended up playing like Fairy Mastermind and a Virtue on the same turn, and obviously High Noon would prevent that. But we were also sitting on Errant Giada, so you could argue, well, we would have just played it instead. And then on our turn, we'd flash in one of the 2-drops and just like kind of run it like that, because High Noon is so annoying. The only downside is not having that red mana. And we do have 2 Myrixes. You could argue to maybe play a basic mountain with the demo field and get it. I wasn't willing to kind of make that trade, but you can also maybe trim a couple of these like solar lands, like Anchorage, maybe not Anchorage per se, but like you don't really like playing the archives, you can probably play in like a couple of red sources that are just like fast lands or something, and play like an island and a plains off of them, and then have High Noon in your deck. I wouldn't be opposed to playing High Noon, and I think that would help out a ton against like the Boros matchup. But I also would argue that our mono red matchup isn't necessarily too bad. It's a little tough at times. If obviously they're on the play and sometimes they have nuts, kind of hard to beat. But realistically, being able to kind of exile their creatures or put it back, making them have to spend mana on the same spells over and over again, is very tough for them to deal with. And that's it from me. That's all I got. I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.